Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you,
I'm
Xenon.
excited
You're
too.
such an amazing performer. You were Minivid's King, was it last year?
Yes.
Yes. And I feel
Yes.
like you're like taking like trans dude porn in like such a cool direction because you're like, it's so queer. And I feel like I can really relate to, I really like what you're doing in the way of, I feel like when I got into like trans porn, being a
Mhm.
trans woman, I felt like so much of it's so normative and just like you're almost confined to like,
Yeah.
okay, you're gonna shoot with the opposite sex and you're gonna really appeal to almost this like chaser dynamic.
Yeah.
And that you're also doing something so queer and just kind of like different than, you know, most like heteronormative trans guy porn, I think is so
Yeah.
cool.
Thank
I
you
was
so
so,
much.
thank you. I was so lucky to shoot you and Courtney 2 years ago at maybe 3 years ago at AVN. I think it was the Cardi B
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
like 2 years, I think.
yeah.
Yeah,
And that was such a fun shoot
it
to shoot with
was.
you. And I'm just so happy we're having a chance to talk more because I feel like we just like don't have chances to talk to the people who we work with because we're always on to the next shoot or
Yeah.
someone has a flight in a few hours. So yeah, well, welcome to the show.
Thank
So do you want,
you.
can you speak to like how you got your start? Like what were your first few shoots?
I got my start when I went to LA for the first time, and I did a couple like independent things, and then I shot with Four Chambers. And that's kind of how I really found my love, because I wasn't sure. I was like, do I really belong here? Can I really do this? Nobody in porn really looks like me. Will it work? Because at that time I was still like deeply in the closet, like just starting, like not doing anything trans related at
Mm-hmm.
all, because I had no idea. Um, so I was just kind of like bumbling around, but
Did
I
you go,
really enjoyed it.
so did you go to LA just to shoot?
I did. I went to maybe try to model. I was like still figuring out, like, can I do these things? Like, do I belong, in these parts of the industry? Because I was only like camming full time before, like a couple of years before that. So that was like my only experience. And then like filming myself here and there. But I really wasn't happy with any of the things I was making, because I was really just catering to my cam audience, which can be very monotonous because they
Yeah.
tend to really like, oh, this the you know like run of the mill things that you can do solo on camera kind of thing. um so I really found my love with like shooting with someone else. I finally like had that experience of like having scene partners and like fleshing out concepts or fantasies or what have you. So I really fell in love with doing that. Yeah.
It's so cool. Yeah, I also started camming and then flew out to California for the first shoot. And I feel like it's almost that normal feeling where you're like, well, what if I get to set and I'm just too scared?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my like biggest fear. I'm like, what if I just show up on set and just be like, oh my God, what do I do? Because it feels like camming is just like in your room. Like it's still
Yeah,
like, obviously it's going out to the world, but I feel like it's just such a big jump up, it feels like. Did you feel the same?
I did. I felt like I was so conscious of every little thing that I was doing. I didn't I didn't feel like 100% comfortable. Like when I did my first like independent shoot with like a guy as this guy, I cried after. It was like a whole thing, like emotional like rush for me. And I was going through like so much in my personal life. It probably wasn't the best time to probably start porn, but I was just going for it. I don't regret it. Like I'm glad that I had those experiences, because it led me up to this point where I'm like so comfortable and like basically ready to shoot anything but pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's so easy to feel inspired right now, but then you're like, oh, I can't shoot anything.
Yeah.
Um,
Now I'm like more ready than ever, and now I can.
So who inspired you to get into porn? Like what made you decide to take the jump from camming to porn? Like, did you see anyone's work that really made you think like, oh, I can do this or I can do something similar to this?
I think so. At the time, really, I was mostly like exposed to like Burning Angel and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So when I found like Four Chambers, I'm like, okay, this is a bit more me, like aesthetically, and I was really happy to be invited and like hired to shoot with them. But at the time, like I said, it was really only like more mainstream stuff that I was exposed to. So I wasn't really seeing myself in those like scenes. Because a lot of people would say, oh, I'm curvy and I get shoots, and I'm just like, but you're
Uh,
not
it's
not quite.
different.
It's very different. um but yeah, so it's hard because yeah, that was like really my exposure to porn like before I started, but then as I went along, like it took me a while to like find, people in the community that I felt like-minded, or looked like me, or like represented me in some way. Yeah, it took a while to find that.
Yeah, I feel like Burning Angel can definitely be like the intro to alternative porn. It's like
Yes.
very surface level, but like I feel like it just gets so hardcore, and then you have like alternative people, quote unquote, and it's like
Yeah.
still not very inclusive of like any trans people or people who are like plus size really, but I
Yeah.
feel like it can be a gateway. So what was your
Yeah.
first four chamber shoot like?
That I only shot with them once. I hope that I can one day in the future again. um Wait, what was the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, what was that experience like? Because like they're such creative sets.
Oh
Yeah, when
wow.
I shot with them, I was like covered in liquid latex and like licking dirty boots and just like all
Yeah,
this really wild stuff. So what was like? It's a very different than like your normal porn experience.
it was new because it was my first threesome, first to begin. It was my first time experiencing breath play. I knew I was
Oh,
interested,
wow.
but I'd never done that before. So it was just like, it was a lot of firsts on camera. But Vex made me feel like so comfy. Like it was a really comfortable, like set environment. Um, I guess there was a lot of things like I personally didn't know, even though I like felt like I was ready and I was like ready to work. I still like didn't know like how to voice certain things, like when
Hmm.
somebody was like sitting on my face, for example, and I was kind of getting smothered a little bit, like I wasn't loud enough to like speak up and say like I need to breathe. There were lots of things that I had to learn, about like being vocal on set and whatnot, but it was a really like comfortable, creative, experience. There was nobody was being pressured, like I could take breaks anytime. um and it was just like Vex was really nice and like easy to work with.
They really
She's
are.
a,
Yeah,
yeah,
they're
yeah, so I felt like really welcomed and like comfortable on set. I enjoyed it a lot.
yeah. I feel like with them, it's just more like it feels like you're just like hanging out with like a queer friend who has this like really crazy art idea, and then
Yeah.
everyone's like, all right, let's do this with you, as opposed to like being on a set with like a director who's like, I'm gonna tell you how to have sex. It feels way more like a creative experience.
Yeah, because I did have an experience a little bit later on with somebody who was more like a mainstream producer. So when he was like saying, okay, let's do this with these photos and like pose like this, but like that, but like this at the same time. And I'm just like, I don't, I've never done this. And I have like no desire to do things this way. Like I don't mind if like people work a certain way or whatever, but I'm really not a mainstream performer. So I just don't like I just don't subscribe to like a lot of the processes and like ways of being and like posing and doing things. So that was like also new. Um I realized like everybody does things differently, but I feel like I prefer the independent side of working. It's a
Totally.
little more
I feel
like free form.
Yeah, I feel like there's such a range of directors who like basically there's some directors who know what they want for every 10 seconds of a full scene. And then there's other
Yeah,
directors who just go in there and you basically get stopped maybe once during the whole scene. I feel like it's such a different range.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is for sure.
And I feel like that's again just something that's most porn viewers don't really get the idea of that and how porn can be so different because it can really be two people just doing kind of whatever they want, where it can be this thing
Hmm.
where the director is like, I need this for 5 seconds, I need this for 20 seconds in this, I need 5 minutes of the anal, and just like all these very, it just is so, feels so weird and mechanical in a way.
Yeah, it does. Um, I remember in that same shoot, like they wanted it to be like I was cooking and like my girlfriend was late, but there's only like bottled water and Cheetos in the kitchen. And I'm just like, this is why people skip over these parts of the movie because it doesn't make any sense.
I am so not for plot in porn. I just like can't ever get into it. I'm just like, if it's a BDSM scene, just have it pre-established. We don't need to know why it's going on. We don't
Yeah.
need to like with four chamber stuff. It feels like it's just like arty, and like you get images and you get sex and you get all the stuff you want, and it's just like you don't need to have like someone walking into the room. I feel like there's a lot of porn where directors are like, well, you have to walk in the room first. It's just like why?
Yes. We
I
did
just
have that where I'm just like, okay, just let's just start where she comes home and don't have me like cooking air or something because it doesn't make sense. Usually I just go with like a specific concept or like a specific sex act, or it could be a general theme, a color, whatever, and just kind of run with it. Like, not all of
yeah.
this, stuff beforehand. It just seems like too complex and we don't like get to the point.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it's way more about like the imagery and what's happening than like the
yeah,
setup. I just
exactly.
yeah, but I'm sure there's some people that totally love that stuff. I shot some like more like mainstream stuff where it has like a full storyline where it's like a soap opera, which is its own thing where it's like, okay, I am hooking up with my professor now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so was there like a scene that made you realize that this is something more than just like going to LA a few times?
I think when I did that four chamber scene, I was like fully sold and I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
like do stuff like that more. Um, yeah. And I just kept going from there. Like I just knew it took me a while to like find out, myself and exactly what I want to be doing truly. Um, but that doesn't mean like, all of my past work like doesn't stand. Like I've retired a lot of things and I don't really like mention a lot of things from the beginning of my career because I feel like it wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just trying, like I was just like experimenting and trying and like trying to do the most, but it hasn't really like followed up to now. But I feel like my stuff from like the past 2-3 years, like all of that stuff is like really true to me and holds up. But I just knew I wanted to continue. Like it was just from there, from literally from that moment, I'm just like, fuck him.
Where like it's like, do you consider porn like also part of your art?
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like the two, they're inextricable. They go together 100%. Um all of this talk about is porn art, can it be art, is art porn? Like it can be, it's both simultaneously for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Yeah, I
Um
completely agree with that. Like,
yeah.
I think it's just a medium. Like, there's going to be some good porn, there's going to be bad porn. I
Yeah,
think that there's just so much of people just almost simplify porn as being just one thing, and it's a lot of things.
it is. Like porn, it shows up in my poetry, or like conversely, like sometimes my poetry shows up in my work, in my porn. It can be a lot of different things. at different times, but I just feel like they're always synonymous with each other. And that's what I love about it, because I like adding other elements that, you know, people might not expect, or like they're not thinking about that. Um, yeah.
It's so cool. Yeah, I'm 100% the same vein of just like, I think when you're, how long have you been in the industry now in porn?
9 years.
9 years? Yeah, I think I'm at like seven, something like that. I feel like after your first few years, you really need to figure out why you're doing it almost. Like,
Yeah.
your reasons in the beginning are, you know, it seems like an exciting thing. It's something you want to pursue and everything. But I feel like after a while, you're just like, okay, I'm here. I've done most of the beginning things I wanted to do, and just figuring out why really. I think
Yeah.
like just, I think you hear a lot more AVN than you used to, that people consider porn their art now. That even these mainstream
Yeah.
performers are really considering porn art now. So I think it's just been a really positive change.
I think so. I think that's really good. Um, because like you said, you know, you have to evaluate exactly why you're doing this. I mean, I've come across a lot of people early in my career where I'm like, maybe you probably shouldn't be doing this, because I don't
Definitely.
think you know why you're doing this. And even I had to figure that out myself. Like when I realized I was trans and everything, I'm like, okay, what am I doing? And like, how do I want to continue like on this path? Because it changed everything for me. And it was a big reason why I could figure out, you know, why I was so depressed. Um, I was kind of like faltering away from my work a little bit because I didn't understand what was going on with me. But once I found that out, like it really changed my perspective on my work and the direction that I wanted to go in when it comes to my work as well. Um, so I'm glad I was able to do that. Because my first couple of years, like they weren't the best. Like there were, you know, some good experiences and whatnot, but a lot of it wasn't great. So I'm glad that I could, you know, take stock of all of that and like renew my love for porn in a way.
Yeah, I feel like when you're going into the industry, I feel like your first few years, a lot of people who you wouldn't trust now are very keen to come up to you and be like, oh, you want to work for the site that either has like bad marketing or like transphobic or like racist or like, you know,
Right.
whatever stuff that you wouldn't usually deal with. Like early in my career, I had stuff with slurs on it that I'm really not cool with, because I have the whole mindset of like, oh, I can change it from the inside, which is
Mm,
definitely naive. And I think a little bit
yeah.
just coming from a small town where I'm like, oh, people will know that it's a slur. It's fine. They'll realize it. But I think it's just so much that you really have to look at your career back a few years in, because you're going to have things that are going to make you wonder if you should really be in this industry. I know I did, because
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm getting harassed because I started a petition to remove the term shemale from sites. And I'm just like, at that point, I was like, why am I doing this? I have all these slurs tied to me already. And then I think it, for me, was going to Berlin and seeing all the art porn stuff. Like, I think people like Four Chambers and, do you know Fuck the Fascism?
I think I've seen I think I've seen it, but I don't know
Yeah.
it too well.
They're from Chile, and they like go to like different fascist like statues and stuff and deface them and like pee on them and fuck on their graves and stuff. It's like the coolest thing ever. And then like I was there seeing that stuff, and I was like, why am
Oh,
I stressed out about people freaking out because I'm like, hey, don't call trans women a she-male, you know?
yeah.
It's like there's so much you can do. So I think like I can, I definitely feel the same with like the whole art porn really giving you almost this whole second life in the industry.
Yeah. It's really amazing. Um, I'm glad I was able to like reassess myself and, you know, get myself on a more comfortable path that's, you know, really me being true to myself and true to my art versus like trying to create something because I can, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're shooting now, or I guess you haven't shot probably in a year like everyone else, but how do you go into preparing a scene, like both creatively and actually just being a performer? What usually goes into that for you?
For me, I mean, I did a couple things earlier this year. Fortunately, I mean, I wish I could have shot a lot more, but generally, what how it is for me is I really like to get to know my scene partner. That's usually where everything stems from, is like my friendship with that person or what we have in common, or like a a common theme that we want to like flesh out with each other. So it's basically like doing the work and like finding what they like, what makes them feel comfortable, what we both like together, um, and just kind of like discussing ideas and, getting to know each other. This is going to seem boring, but that's basically what it is.
So it's like pretty
Um,
organically for you.
yeah, I don't, like I said, I don't do scripts. I don't do like long drawn out. I don't like things to feel like they're agonized over. I want something that is genuine and organic and like really pleasurable genuinely for the two of us, or several of us, however many people it
Yeah.
might be. Um, just, doing those things. Because I found that the best work that I've done are with people that I have close friendships with, people that I know really well, people that I've worked with at least a couple times. Um, yeah, and like it just naturally blossoms out of those connections that I have with people. So that's what goes into that. Definitely like consent, establishing, clear boundaries, and, doing something that's true to us.
It's so cool. Yeah, it sounds like it's just very organically because like your art is yourself, and then you can just like
Yeah.
take that and really work with other collaborators who are close to you.
Hmm.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
Um, do you think you had your dream scene yet, or do you have one in mind?
I think I've done quite a few things where I'm like, this is some of the best work I've ever made. But I would really like to make a scene where I am like a plaything for like these brothers who are also like, they're farm boys.
Oh wow. I'm into it. I'm into it.
And they're working and they're strapping and they're like doing stuff all day, and then I'm like in the kitchen, making pies and stuff, and they just like ravage me.
That's amazing. Everyone else is like has like some vague answer where they're like, oh yeah, like I would like to like work for more mainstream companies or a gangbang, and you're like two farmer boys. It's amazing. I love that.
Well,
A
more like
hundred percent.
four. Like four is like my dream kind of like number. um Two is okay because like I would really like to do a scene with two people, um like a double team kind of thing, but I think it would be even more fun if it was like more brothers.
Yeah, so it's like a gangbang of brothers. I
Yes.
think that should definitely happen for you in the future. I think like after the pandemic, that should be the first thing that
I would
happens.
love it. That's like one of the good things about doing this, is like, can actually like look for people who would want to work with me or like do something like that, because I find that with queer men, cis men, it's slim pickings.
For sure.
For
There's
me
like
personally,
five.
yeah, there's like a couple like spread out. They're like not all in the same place. Um, because I found that there's not really a lot of space for trans guys in the industry who are like not non-binary or like not cis-passing, or just not doing certain things with their transition. And it's like it's mostly like thin and white and cis-passing, and that's kind of like hard for me. I've had people ask me like, when am I going to be on hormones, or before I had my top surgery, like what's the deal with that, and and all of that stuff, like making me feel like I'm not valid, or I don't belong because I don't look a certain way, which is very frustrating.
Yeah, were you like, did you relate to like much trans guy porn really at all? Like that you see like the mainstream stuff?
In a way, yes, because I don't think that there's any difference between me and those performers, or like
Hmm.
even me and like cis men, really, because I really
Yeah.
don't see myself as different on the inside. But then
Yeah,
when I
I
really break
feel
it
that.
down, I'm like, this, I wouldn't get invited to make a scene like this, or I
Yeah.
wouldn't get invited by this company to do anything for them because I don't look like these guys. I think they kind of, it almost feels like they just want to elevate people as like, oh, you wouldn't even know, just by
Yeah.
looking at them. And
And it's
like the
like,
genitals are the surprise kind of thing. And I'm just like, okay,
oh,
all right.
yeah, there was so much of that. And yeah, for trans women porn, I hate that shit so much. That's like my red line. I'm like, I don't ever want to be in a porn where I have to talk about being trans in it. Like, you never
Yeah.
hear like a cis woman have to talk about why she has a vagina in porn, you know? Like, I don't want to have
Oh,
to talk about my junk like that. Yeah, I just never related to much trans women porn because it's always so straight and it's just like all for the men.
right.
So like, I feel like I just watch all like lesbian porn. And I was just like, oh yeah, I'm a dyke. I belong here. Like it's the same thing. Like I don't view
Yeah.
myself any different as cis women. You don't view yourself differently as cis men, but like the trans porn for like both trans men and trans women, I feel like are so limited, and it's like just appealing to this like chaser mentality.
Yeah. That's why I feel really comfortable working with trans women. I've worked with quite a few who are my friends. And I mean, those people have really uplifted me and kind of got me to the point where I am now, where I feel so comfortable being myself on camera. Um, and like my friendships with those people also like really kind of fueled my desire to continue and to like do things my own way. Um, I mean, I haven't had the opportunity to work with too many trans men, especially like at this point. Like, I feel like I'm the best version of myself that I could be. And I just don't have any opportunities currently because of the state of the world. But that's kind of like what got me to this point. Just like, because me and trans women have always been like so opening, like so welcoming, so open to me. Um, and I've done some of my best work with them. So I have a lot of respect for trans women and a lot of love for trans women. I just appreciate them so much. I feel like on the male side of things, it's not so easy. Like
Yeah.
with cis men, and like even with some trans guys, like it's hard. Like it almost feels like they don't want to elevate anybody who doesn't look like them or can like run in the same circles as them, which
But
is
even
just like,
like I feel like even those like the known male trans guy porn performers, I even think to each other, there's this like really high level of competition because
yeah,
it seems like there's only one or two who are like known on like the big level of the industry at a time, and it just feels like there's a lot of hostility there. And I think I saw it.
yeah,
There were two trans guy companies in the Bay Area at the same time, and it felt like there was so much competition and just stuff between them, which is just really too bad that there's like that competition and almost this like cutthroat attitude between trans
yeah,
performers at times.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that. Like, we don't want to include your voice, or, that kind of vibe, that just like you don't belong with us. Um, and that's really unfortunate, because I think people need to see the diversity like within our communities, that
Hmm.
it's not everybody's gonna be ripped and like looking cis-passing, and all of those things. And I feel like they only want people who are at who you know whose transitions look a certain way,
Hmm.
and they all like kind of the same. And I think that it's okay. Like, it's okay to have like a typical transition experience, but I think there's so much more to that. And
Hmm.
then there's so much more to us than how we transition.
Hmm. Definitely.
Like, for me, it's such a personal thing as well. Like, I don't necessarily go on and on about my experience with hormones, and because I wanted to like keep certain things for myself, and like
Yeah.
not have everything fully displayed on a platform where people, scrutinize and sometimes criticize me. I mean, I just had
Hmm.
something the other day where somebody commented on my photos, like asking, what kind of mental illness do I have?
Like trans people deal with that shit so much, and it's like not a thing that cis people know about. That's like you get that shit on social media. Like,
Yeah.
I had turfs come after me when I tried to be the first trans cops girl. Like, there's a
Ugh.
lot of people who are going after trans people, and I think porn is gets the same thing as like athlete, like trans athletes, where there's a lot of this
Yeah.
vibe where it's like, well, you're going to come in here and you're going to ruin gender, and then there's going to be no porn anymore and no one can masturbate. And it's like this whole reality that doesn't exist. And I think for trans porn, what almost feels so upsetting is that they're only showing one type of trans person, and it's usually in a very heteronormative way. It
Yeah.
really almost co-ops what being trans is in a way, and I feel like that's why it feels so personal. That's like, why is some cis man making millions of dollars off of calling trans women she-males and saying
Right.
trans women are going to trick you into being gay and shit like that? Like, that's what I feel is like so upsetting about that stuff, as opposed to, you know like stuff where there isn't that same power dynamic, that it's the outside group making money and almost exploiting the image of
Yeah.
trans people.
That's how I feel about, you know, whiteness being elevated over everything else. Because when I think
Hmm.
about the trans guys that, do show up on sites and things like that, it's like maybe five or six names, and they're
Yeah.
all white, and they're all, average size, or like really ripped and stuff like that. I'm just like, well, I don't look like that, and I probably will never look like that. So where do I fit? Because it feels like it's only white guys.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's unfortunate. And when I see like cis men, even if they're like cis men of color and they're mostly like working with these people, I'm like, what are you doing?
Hmm.
It bothers me, because there are so many other people who could be like adding diversity and like being visible, and they don't really get a chance,
Hmm. Do you
because
think?
everybody
Oh,
wants to see the same guy. Sorry.
do you? Oh no, totally. I am 100% digging what you're saying right now. It's actually, I want to talk about this too, but it's involved with it. Do you think it's more the studios, or just like content trade people trying to like essentially only have like these like white just passing trans guys? Do you think that's mostly because of the studios, or do you think it's content trade? And how do you think like us all coming back and having this almost fresh restart of porn coming
Hmm.
back from COVID, do you think that's going to affect that in any way?
I think it's a bit of both. I think because mainstream studios and producers kind of set the standard, I think a lot of people who have done work with these people, or might um, admire the work of these studios or whatever, now come on an independent level and want to mirror the same things that they see. And I think that also causes a problem, because for us independent performers, we can do whatever we want. We don't have to adhere to these racist, fatphobic, transphobic standards. Like, we
Yeah.
can do something completely different. So it kind of bothers me when I see people saying, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and it's going to be so great. And I'm like, this is exactly what you would be doing on a mainstream set if you showed up. So what exactly is different or innovative about what you're doing if you're just going to work with thin, cispassing white people? What's happening, you know? So I definitely think like the two sides feed off of one another. I guess if I would say which one has more impact, probably mainstream, because people just see that stuff first. It's just there for everybody to see, and you know, we all see it. But I think, you know, everybody involved is responsible.
Yeah.
We could all do better.
Yeah, I feel, I don't know if this is a naive thing, but I almost feel like the more studios go away, I think the better porn's going to be.
I think so.
Like, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, I kind of want like the anarchy model. I want everyone just to make their own shit. I don't think there should be, like, I mean, even these, like the performers that are winning 12 AVNs at a time, like Angela White or something like that.
Right.
It seems like they can make more money off making their own stuff and just hiring a crew, as opposed to being under a major studio that's taking a majority of their money and owning all their scenes. It just really seems like eventually everyone's just going to be like, why are we letting these guys take most of our money?
Yeah.
I think
I
there's
feel
still
fortunate. No, go ahead, please.
Oh, I think there's still going to be directors and stuff, but I don't think that there's casting directors that are going to essentially be running the industry. I really hope it doesn't stay like that.
Yeah, I hope so. I've had some good experiences working with like much smaller scale, like independent producers, like Lust Garden, or, you know, like Courtney and you, like what we did. Like that stuff I really enjoy, and like I want to do more things like that. But in terms of like, I mean, a big studio would never hire me. Let's be real.
I feel that.
At this point, I kind of take it as a compliment, because I really am not like part of the mold in any way. And like, I've never been the person like to follow and be part of the majority. I've always been the different one. So I'm just gonna like run with that and just keep on that path, because I feel like that is really gonna give me you know, my own version of success and just like love for my work, because I really don't want to let that go. Because I was doing things that like weren't true to me before, and I'm much more true to myself now. So like, it's not worth like, you know, selling my soul and my creative ability to just to work because it's, I don't know, whatever the name of the studio is. Who even knows? But yeah.
And who knows how long they'll be around for it even. So I think that's always a positive thing to think about in porn, where you outlast the people you don't like.
Yeah.
That's always a positive.
Definitely.
Do you have a favorite city or place to shoot?
Wow. I love shooting in Vegas. Hate AVN. Hate conventions. Do not like conventions. I don't like the environments. And I've experienced a lot of toxicity in those environments. I don't enjoy it. But I love, like, I feel really inspired. Like when I'm in Vegas, like I've gotten some of my best ideas there, like shot some of the best things I've ever shot there. I love working in Philly because it's just so queer.
In
And
Philly?
yeah, there's is a really good like queer porn community there, and I've made some amazing pieces of work in Philly. Um, like my threesome scene with my friends Iro and Mina. And I had a really good time choosing that. I call that my magnum opus sometimes because it's so good. Like when we shot it, I was so happy. Yeah, and I've shot things with my other friend Mia and Eva. Like it's just amazing to shoot there and work with my friends. Um, yeah, I really haven't been to like that many places. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the energy during AVN week of shooting where everyone's shooting, it's just like different. It's really
yeah.
cool. I don't know, did you go to AVN like maybe like 6 years ago or 7 years ago, or did you just start
No,
going the last 2 years? It was
I
so different.
was it.
Yeah, it was all about like people going into the convention and like trying to get gigs with people and stuff essentially.
Okay.
And now it's just like everyone just shooting everywhere. I feel like everyone's just doing content trades now.
Yeah. That was definitely my experience going into it. I went 3 years in a row, 2019, 2018, 2017. So those are like the 3 years that I went. And I don't like conventions. Like that's just the thing that keeps popping into my head. I just don't like it. Um, it's just too much. And I did have that experience of like feeling like I didn't belong, like, certain people not like ignoring that I'm there or like don't want me around and that kind of thing. And I'm just like, okay, this seems like it felt like a mainstream type of environment. And
Mm.
I didn't really enjoy that feeling. I felt like my last one was more like when I went to the last one that I attended, I was like, okay, there seems to be like a lot of independent people coming in now, and it seems like more black and brown and queer and like independent people are attending, which was a cool thing. Um, but the other times I went, I didn't really have that experience, and I feel like the last one that I missed was probably like even better in terms of like people who were attending. Like I wish I could have gone and like worked with and stuff, but you know but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like those things, there's good and bad things about it because like being able to see how large the industry is and how it's literally people from all over the world.
Yeah.
Like that's really inspiring, but at the same time it's like you're in a room with way too many people and
Yeah.
some dudes who don't get consent and like will like touch people and stuff, and you're just like, I need to leave. Um, yeah, it can be a lot, but I'm really happy that's mostly just shooting now. That's like
Yeah.
the most inspiring thing to me, to know that there's literally like hundreds of shoots going on in hotel rooms in Vegas, like at all times. I think it's like the coolest thing.
It is. It's really cool.
Yeah. What are like some of your weirdest industry experiences? They can be good, bad, or otherwise. Is there anything that really sticks out?
I think sometimes, getting to work with people who are so similar to you can just be like funny. Like I was doing a threesome scene with another performer and their partner who like is in videos and stuff with them. And we were just beginning, just kind of like, getting their nerves out, kind of
Mm-hmm.
like beginning to touch each other and like get to know each other a little bit. And then in the middle of that going on, their partner like breaks the kind of like touching and kissing with me to ask me what's the strangest book I've ever read. And I was just like, okay, we could talk about this for so many hours. um, it was just nice to like have that experience of talking and just like having random things come up. Because sometimes it can feel like sort of like an out of body experience when you're like working with somebody, especially if you haven't worked with them before.
Mm-hmm.
There can be like a lot of nerves and stuff, but that just totally broke the ice. And it was so free flowing from there. I just enjoy those things. I mean, wow, I'm going blank.
That's a good
It's
one
been a
though.
long
Yeah,
day. Yeah, that is a good
that's
one.
totally an answer. You don't have to give a second answer. It's okay. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the first few minutes of a scene, like especially when you're working with someone new, there is that level where you're like, I don't want to do something weird that they're like,
Yeah,
why why should I decide to work with her or something? That's just like this whole level of just being like, okay. And then I feel like there's just like the moment. It's like, okay, it's real. It's going on. It's going down.
yeah.
Yeah. It's
I
gonna
feel
be
like
I think it's gonna be so weird going back to that after this time off in a way.
yes. When I shot a few scenes like a bit earlier this year, um, one with somebody that I hadn't worked with before, and another person that I had shot with
Mm-hmm.
quite a few times. Um, and I mean, wow, it really was like starting over completely from the beginning because I hadn't worked with anybody, not just for a while, but not since I had top surgery and, all that stuff. So I was like, still like getting used to my body being what it is. And then
Yeah.
to have somebody interact with my body now for the first time ever since I had surgery and since a long time because pandemic. Um, so yeah, but I found that even though I had those bits of nervousness of like, how do I do things on camera now? Like, how
Mm-hmm.
is it gonna look? Finally not having to think about having tits while I'm on camera and what to do with those. Um, it was so much better. Like, even though I was nervous and stuff, I was still so much more comfortable. And it was easier, I found, to like interact with the other person because I'm not thinking about my tits are there, my tits are there, just like on a loop in
Yeah.
my brain all the time. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that has
it
to be
was,
on both fronts. That has to be like a really big thing having your first scene after top surgery and then also having your first scene since the pandemic. Like
yeah,
that hits on a few levels.
it does. Because I mean, the last scenes that I shot, like before the pandemic was declared, I mean, they're good scenes. But I was still like waiting for this moment. Like after I shot that stuff, I really knew that I wanted to have surgery and I wanted to get there. I didn't think I was going to get there so soon. That I was going to have basically fully decide on it in 2020 and then have surgery in 2020 as well. Um,
Yeah, and then you had basically off time during the pandemic, right, to
yeah.
recover.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a lot of off time. I basically took a hiatus in 2020 when the pandemic was declared. And like, I actually was planning to go to LA and stuff in March, and I had to cancel because of the pandemic. But it really gave me perspective. I think I needed to stop completely to kind of figure out, okay, what are you doing? You need to change certain things or you're not going to make it. So I had to look inward and like really stop everything so I could focus on that because I mean, work is always my focus, like when I'm
Yeah.
working. And I continued on, with my body and stuff. I worked around it. I was still coming out in my work like very slowly. I was doing things very tentatively because I wasn't sure about a lot of things. And I didn't want to be scrutinized. Like I didn't want to put everything on a plate and have people scrutinize it. So I definitely needed that time, as difficult as it was, to not work, not see friends, to be so isolated. Like I definitely needed time to be in a cocoon. And I'm out now.
Yeah, I feel like the pandemic kind of almost served as that for everyone in a way of you need to figure out some internal stuff that you probably didn't have time to before because you were so busy with, oh, I have a
Yeah.
shoot in this city. I'm going to do a screening here. Like, I feel like now it's just you're kind of stuck where you are and you have to figure some stuff out.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely not how I thought it was going to happen, a global pandemic, but
Me either. That's not what I was expecting at all.
did not think
If
that's what it was going to take.
anything,
Yeah.
yeah, if anything, I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to elect to take a hiatus at some points. But this time they're like, okay, no, bitch, you have to do it right now.
Yeah,
No
truly.
choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it takes a global pandemic to figure out your own trauma sometimes and work through that. You know, it did for me where I'm like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so what are some things that you wish you could do in your career that you haven't so far?
Aside from that scene that I told you about, oh, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think, I mean, I would like to paint again. Like, that's something that I've been, trying to do for the longest time and like haven't been able to do really for more than a decade. Now that I'm so secure on like what I'm doing aesthetically, especially like with my Polaroids and stuff, I love that. Like, that's really like my medium away from video.
Mm-hmm.
I take Polaroids, so I really wanted to do like some erotic like collages and like paintings with my Polaroids. That's something that I really, really want to do.
It's so cool.
That's Thank you. Aside from doing video work, which I wish I could be full on doing that again, but I know it's gonna take a while. Um, but yeah, that's like my goal, and like to do an updated like version of my zine, because I was doing like a digital and print zine with my Polaroids. I haven't done one in a really long time, so I would like to kind of get back to doing that because people seem to really like it, and I'm sad that I haven't been able to do one in so long. But now that I have a very clear idea of myself and my style and my art direction, and I mean, I just feel like it's clearer than it's ever been since I
Yeah.
started doing porn, like, period. Um, so I want to do more things like that, aside from getting back to doing video.
I feel like just from an outside perspective, your porn just has like such an artistic element to it. Like, I feel like I know your aesthetic just like when I think of your name. I'm like, oh yeah, that's their aesthetic. So I think
Thank
you're
you.
definitely doing really good with that. So what are you hoping to do after the pandemic once everyone's hopefully vaccinated? And are you looking to jump back into shooting, or are you going to take it slow for a while? Or
I definitely want to get back to shooting, and I want to shoot with my friends, like people that I've worked with a lot that, I wish that I could have just shot with last year. Um, I want to do that. Like, all the plans that I didn't get to flesh out, I had to cancel LA. I was really excited about coming there and like working with some friends and some new people that I'd been following for, quite some time, whether it's photography or video. Um, so yeah, I want to do that stuff. Like, I've missed so many of my friends for so long. It's always like, even if I haven't seen somebody in a while, I'm like, I'm gonna see them because I'll
mm-hmm.
be here and I'll be there and I'll be traveling. Now it's just not like that. So
Yeah, it's so different. Yeah, this is the most I've been in one place since high school. Like, it's so different. Where I feel like my entire life, from the time I was like in 20, being in bands and then getting into porn, like it's always been like, oh,
yeah,
you're gonna go travel here, you're gonna go travel here, you have this travel day coming up. It's just
right.
so different, and you're just like really in your own space. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's such a different experience. I
It
cannot wait
is.
to get back to shooting as well. That was the last
Me
thing I
too.
did before it. Yeah. Um, so why do you think you've been able to have such a long career? Because 9 years in the industry, that's 4 porn careers.
Ooh.
I think the average career is about 2 years. What do you think
Okay.
has kept you going?
Constant evolution. Um, I've never really stayed in the same place aesthetically for too long. Even though I have like a very specific style, I think being able to be so many different things across the span of my career has definitely helped. Um, I mean, it wasn't always great personally for me, like in my
Hmm.
mental health and stuff, but that's what happens when you repress yourself and you're under like
Yeah.
layers and layers of identity.
Hmm.
Um, I think I could definitely see within the timeline, like me shedding a lot of things that didn't work or like wasn't really for me. Things that I was trying so hard to be, um, letting go of those things, I think really kind of secured my place in my career. And like, even I'm sure like a lot of people have like disappeared or fallen off. And, I don't work with
Yeah.
certain people anymore. Like things change. Um, but I think becoming more and more true to myself as the time has gone along and like being open to change and like open to evolution and knowing that I'm not that person anymore, or I don't like this idea anymore, or I'm not doing this thing anymore. Like that has helped me achieve longevity that I think probably other people might not have achieved the same thing. um I think that's what it is. Like just knowing yourself is the most important part, I think, in this
Yes.
particular job. Like you have to know yourself really well, um in order to really stick around.
Yeah, I feel like as performers, we have to like know our sexuality kind of inside and out because you have to
Yeah.
access it. And not every set condition is going to be the most comfortable set in the world. You're going to have times where there's too many people in the room. You're going to have
Right.
hot lights. You might be
Yeah.
shooting at like 3 a.m. because someone's flight was delayed or something. Like, I feel like there's just so many factors. And do you feel like camming has really like helped you be able to access all that?
I think that was a catalyst of me kind of like realizing that I'm a sexual person,
Hmm.
and that ability can be harnessed, because before I started that, like I really didn't see myself, like I knew I had desires and things, but I didn't think that like sex was for me. I felt like
Yeah.
sex was for the person that I was having sex with and like not really for me. And there was a lot that I just like wasn't feeling. So I didn't see myself as like a sexual being that can be lusted over or like desired,
Hmm.
really, and that it was like a part of my own strength. But I think camming helped me realize that, oh, I can be this goddess. I can be anything I want to be and make money off of it.
Yeah. I feel like I just remember the first day camming, like when you make your first like $20 and you're in your bedroom and you're like,
Yes.
what? How did I do this? Some random person on the other side of the planet gave me $20. Like I feel like there's that moment where you're like, oh
Yeah.
wow, I can
Yeah.
do this. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what it was. And my first time camming, I was in like a black top and a skirt, and they like, wanted me to like be naked in the window and like all of this mess. And
Oh,
I just, it was so weird, but like I was making money and I just enjoyed the aspect of like, I control this. This
yeah.
is like my domain. I can like do whatever I want to do, and be whatever I want to be, and be desirable, and also like be the boss.
Yeah. I feel like performers who come from camming, you have this own like mentality where you're like, oh, I can make stuff on my own.
Yeah.
Like obviously getting shoots and all this stuff is really important for having an income and being validated in the industry and all this. But like end of the day, you can just jump on cam and it might be a
Yeah.
slow cam day, but you can still make something. You can do it on your terms, basically any day you
Mm-hmm.
want. Like I think that's
Yeah.
like the thing that really might have fueled like this whole like indie porn thing. Because I feel like now it's just so common that most of these girls who are getting into the industry have this experience in the past.
Yeah. Even though I don't really identify with that part of my career anymore.
Hmm.
Because I don't cam anymore, and but like I'm glad that I had the ability, like it was my introduction, like it's still a part of my story.
Hmm.
um and I'm still grateful that I can look back on that time and like, yeah, it helped me grow. Like it helped me get to this point where I'm at today, because I had to do all of those things to get to this point where I'm at now. um because again, I was so buried under so much stuff, you know,
Yeah.
like the way I was raised and socialized, and you know, the kind of relationships thereafter that I got into, um and things that I had to learn living as a woman. um it just helped me understand a lot of things, and like I still hold that power that I had
Hmm.
back then. It just looks different now, but I still have that power inside where I'm like, okay, this starts and it ends with me. Like, you know, I have to say here, I can do whatever I want. I can make it
Yeah.
into whatever I want. Yeah.
That's, that's so awesome. Well, I have one more question for you.
Okay.
If you could magically change one thing in porn overnight, tomorrow is totally different, what would it be?
Less white people. Just like
Yeah.
less white people with the money and like having a say and just like orchestrating everything. Because I feel like that's like seriously become our problem. Like, you know, like I said earlier, like one of my biggest issues with like trans representation, for example, is that like white trans people always get elevated first. They
Hmm.
always get the chance to do things first. And then it kind of trails off and it ends there. And then you don't see that there's like a whole other part of this industry that, you
Hmm.
know, is being ignored. Um, so I think definitely like giving more money to Black and brown people
Yeah.
and having those people in charge, like in all areas. I'm talking about like crew, direction, production, like styling and makeup artistry, like especially everything, everything. Um, you know, queer people of color, like queer trans
Yeah.
people of color, like we need more of that. It would be just like a lot less elevating whiteness. Like get rid of it completely. You don't need an iota of that anymore.
There's been enough. There's been enough white people winning AVNs. We can take a break for a few years. We're all right.
Yes, yes, because
Yeah.
it's always more of the same,
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, we need more. You know, we need different people.
Yeah.
We need new blood coming into this. That's like gonna give it life, and just because people need to see the representation, they need to see it. Like I'm glad that I was able to add certain representation that I did before in terms of like whether it's body type or just like the way my body is, the kinds of marks and things that I have on my body are like having really huge tits. Like it wasn't great, like for me personally, but
Yeah.
people would come to me and say like, wow, you know, I've never seen anybody that has boobs like that in a video, and like I have boobs like that and I don't see that. And I'm like, that's so great, you should love them. You know, like I'm glad that I was able to like give that to people. So like it's not there. If people are always telling me like, I'm so glad that I've seen your work, because I haven't really seen myself in porn.
Yeah, I think representation is obviously extremely important, but we also have to start giving these people a stake in these companies because I feel like it's
Yeah.
so much like what even these award shows are doing where they're like, okay, we're going to be inclusive. And then it's like, you're not it, bringing people into the company that are people of color. It's still white people giving out awards and being like, okay, we'll let you win this award or do this. It just feels like it's very
Yeah.
performative. And it's,
And I have to see like people like Bella Thorne, for example.
mm-hmm,
Like everybody was like, oh my God, Bella Thorne made a porn. And I'm just like, it's just the same bisexual lighting that you could see that anywhere,
mm-hmm,
and small hands. Like he's great, but he's also like the first guy that you think of when you think of like alternative-ish mainstream porn,
yeah,
you know? And I'm like, she's not doing anything different. Like We don't need this.
We don't. I consider the whole Bella Thorne thing a lot like Caitlyn Jenner, because the trans community doesn't need Caitlyn Jenner at all. But at the same time, I think it might normalize it to people who, like, let's say live in Iowa, who are like, oh, I know this girl and she was on the Disney Channel and now she has an OnlyFans and now sex work is kind of okay. Because I speak to this because my family couldn't get pronouns down for years. And then Caitlyn Jenner came out. All of my family is like, oh yeah, we understand now. So I guess that's my hope, that even though I think what she's doing is complete bullshit, because it is, I think people in the middle of nowhere might really care about it, or at least normalize it in a way. So maybe that's just my overly optimistic outlook on it. But
I mean, I really think there's some truth to that. Like, she is unfortunate, and we really don't need like demi celebrities coming out of nowhere and like not doing anything for us, because you know the community is so much more than just people who work on mainstream sets.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people don't see that because they only want to like elevate. Like every time I see a lot of media that like has sex workers, it's a lot of people who kind of again, like they're like average looking white people, don't have a lot of responsibility. Like a lot of us are parents, like I'm a single parent. There's so much variety in the industry, and people need to see that it's not just a lot of the same, doing a lot of the same things that they do. Because yeah, I think that's where a lot of the violence comes in, like whether it's just like general hostility online or stuff that happens in real life where people get killed or, you know, assaulted. It's always the minorities and like people of color have to suffer the hand of that the most. That's why it bothers me so much, because you know they're just expecting like Bella Thorne types to be doing these things, and they don't, you know, when they see other things or they might like get wind of other things, that's when it like becomes a problem. If that makes sense to you.
That definitely makes sense.
So definitely like that all ties into representation matters and is very important. And to also be like respectful when it comes to representing people and like adding people in, you know, because I see a lot of things that are just fetishizing people, you know, and like I just don't enjoy seeing that.
I mean that there's still various sites that are still around with all the fetishizing terms, both for people of color and for trans people, is just so ridiculous in 2021. Like, I mean, it was ridiculous 5 years ago. But, well, I think that's a very good, if you could magically change something in porn, because it definitely needs changing 100%. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. I had such a great time.
Thank you, Chelsea. I did too.
Thank you.